The moment the windshield wipers froze mid-swipe, Emily's last breath of laughter caught in her throat because at exactly 6:04 p.m., the radio crackled with a final weather bulletin out of Pine Ridge, Wyoming. Storm will be historic. Get home before the kettle whistles or the mail truck is the last thing moving tonight. A single snowflake the size of a silver dollar landed on the glass, lingered, then slid sideways like a tear refusing to fall. And the headlights ahead vanished into white. She sat very still, engine idling, counting heartbeats against the quiet tick of her watch. 1, 2, 3. And then the road disappeared. Whiteout swallowed the 2-lane county road so completely that the yellow center line might never have existed. Emily tightened her gloved fingers around the steering wheel. The defroster whimpered like an old dog too tired to bark. She had left the diner in Pine Ridge 20 minutes earlier, pockets still fragrant with the cinnamon steam from Mrs. Callahan's Wednesday special apple cider donuts, dusted in powdered sugar that clung to coat sleeves like sweet snow itself. The diner's neon open sign had flickered goodbye in her rearview mirror, and the radio had promised she had a narrow 20-minute window before the blizzard clamped down. Now that window slammed shut. The wind rose, a low wolf moan threading through the gaps of the doors. Emily eased off the accelerator, but the Civic slid anyway, a slow, graceful pirouette that ended in a soft crunch against a snowbank taller than the hood. Engine still running, tires spinning uselessly. She pressed the hazard lights and watched them blink like a heartbeat slowing. She reached for her phone. 1 bar, then none. Then the screen went black, battery icon red, then empty. The cold began as a polite guest, tapping on her cheeks, then grew impatient, slipping icy hands beneath her scarf. Emily tried to dig out with the collapsible shovel she kept in the trunk, but every scoop she tossed behind simply blew back into her face. The storm laughed in gusts. After 10 minutes, her breath crystallized on her eyelashes. After 15, she could no longer feel the tips of her ears. She crawled back inside, slammed the door, and felt the first nibble of fear. Not the dramatic kind that makes a person scream, but the quiet, measured kind that counts minutes the way accountants count coins. Outside, the world narrowed to the space between 2 faint yellow hazards blinking SOS. Emily wrapped her arms around her knees and began the arithmetic of survival. Half a tank of gas, maybe 3 hours of heat. She pictured her mother's kitchen in Cheyenne, yellow gingham curtains, kettle humming, and the image bruised her heart. A sudden scrape against the driver's window startled her. Just a branch, she told herself. Then the branch scraped again, insistently. She wiped the fogged glass and saw nothing but white. Still, she whispered, "Please, not yet," as if the storm could be reasoned with. Minutes stretched like taffy. 10, 20. The heater's fan sputtered. Emily closed her eyes and tried to remember the scent of wet cedar from her grandfather's porch in summer. But all she smelled was cold metal and her own fear. At 7:12, the sound came, a low growl of diesel straining against drifts. Headlights, faint at first, then brighter, carved a tunnel through the swirling dark. A shape emerged, a forest green Kenworth with amber running lights glowing like hearth coals. The truck crunched to a stop, idling steady. Emily's pulse leapt and then hesitated. She had grown up on warnings. Never leave the car, never trust strangers. But the cold was already inside her coat, licking at her ribs. The driver's door opened. A man in a plaid wool jacket stepped down tall, beard frosted white, knit cap pulled low. He raised a gloved hand, not in greeting exactly, more like a calming gesture you offer a spooked horse. "You all right in there, miss?" His voice carried the gentle rasp of someone who spent more time with coffee than sleep. Emily cracked the window an inch. "Stuck," she managed, teeth chattering around the word. "I see that. Name's John. I haul feed out of Sheridan to the ranches south of here. Storm's fixing to get worse. Car drivable?" She shook her head. "Then let's get you warm while we figure the rest." He didn't move closer, didn't reach for the door handle, letting her decide. Emily glanced at the silent dashboard lights, then at the swirl beyond. She grabbed her purse, took a breath sharp as needles, and stepped out. The wind pushed her sideways. John's hand caught her elbow steady as a fence post. Together, they waded through knee-high drifts to the truck. Inside the Kenworth, heat rolled over her like a wool blanket fresh from the dryer. The cab smelled of coffee, pine air freshener, and something faintly nostalgic peppermint gum. A small ceramic mug, chipped at the rim, steamed on the dashboard. John motioned to the passenger seat. "Sit. Seatbelt clicks a little hard. Give it a yank." Emily obeyed. The belt clicked. The door shut, sealing out the roar. She realized she was shaking not from cold now, but from the sudden absence of it. John poured coffee from a thermos into a second mug. 2 sugars, dash of cream. "That okay?" She nodded, wrapping both hands around the cup. The warmth stung her fingertips back to life. Outside, the storm pressed against the windshield like a living thing. Inside, the only sound was the soft rattle of the spoon John used to stir his own coffee. Clink, clink, then silence. He clicked on a small overhead light. In its glow, Emily saw laugh lines carved deep around his eyes, the kind that come from squinting at horizons. "You got folks expecting you?" "Mom. She'll worry when I don't call. Nearest tower's 20 miles back. No signal tonight, but I've got a CB. I'll raise the sheriff's office, let 'em know you're safe." He reached for the handset, spoke in calm codes. Emily caught fragments. "Female motorist, vehicle off mile marker 27, requesting tow when plows can pass." Static answered, then a dispatcher's voice promising to log it. John hung up the mic and offered a small smile. "Storm has to quit its tantrum first. Might be morning. You okay with that?" Emily swallowed. "I don't want to be a burden." He chuckled. "Low. Ma'am, I once spent 3 days snowed in at a truck stop in Nebraska with a load of frozen turkeys and a dispatcher who quoted scripture at me every hour on the hour. You're a far better conversationalist, I'm betting." Time loosened inside the cab. John shared the last of Mrs. Callahan's donuts. He'd grabbed a bag to go, too, and told stories about life on Highway 14, the rancher who paid him in homemade cheese, the time he delivered a newborn foal in the trailer because the vet was 2 hours late. Emily found herself laughing despite the storm, the sound surprising her, like a bird that had forgotten it could sing. Between stories, quiet settled. Snow ticked against the windshield in soft grains. John adjusted the heater dial with practiced fingers. Emily noticed a small wooden plaque screwed above the visor. "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard mile." She traced the words with her eyes. Softly, she asked. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" John considered. "The road and I have an understanding. I keep her steady. She shows me stars you can't see in town. But nights like tonight, company's nice." He glanced over. "What about you?" "City girl, by the sound of it. Cheyenne. Insurance office. Spreadsheets don't talk back." She smiled, but it trembled. "Tonight I just wanted to reach Mom before the storm. She makes cocoa with tiny marshmallows shaped like snowmen. I keep telling her I'm 32, but she still buys them." John's eyes softened. "Sounds like a good mom." "She is." Emily's voice dropped. "Dad passed 2 years ago. Heart attack. Ever since, she worries if I'm 5 minutes late." Silence filled the cab like warm water. Outside, the blizzard howled on. Emily stared at the steam curling from her cup and wondered how many miles her mother had paced the kitchen floor. Midnight crept closer. The heater's fan whirred softer. John tapped the dashboard. "She's getting low on fuel. I can idle maybe another hour before I risk it. But I've got extra blankets, battery lantern, food. We're not freezing tonight." Emily studied his face, the calm certainty there. "You didn't have to stop," she said quietly. "Plenty of trucks drove past on the interstate before I skidded off." He shrugged. "Could have been my daughter out here." He reached into the glove box and pulled out a small photo college graduation. A young woman in a green gown, hair the same chestnut as his. "Maggie's in Denver now. I pray every mile that if she's ever stuck, somebody pulls over." Emily traced the edge of the photo with a fingertip. "She looks kind." "She is. Gets it from her mama." A new question rose in Emily's chest, gentle but insistent. And she turned to the camera we can't see, but somehow feel. "What would you do in their place? Drop a thought, or even a single emoji below?" 1:17 a.m. The storm eased from scream to murmur. Headlights swept across the windshield again, this time a snowplow. Amber beacons flashing. Behind it, a flatbed tow truck. John rolled down the window. Icy air barged in. The plow driver leaned out. "Road's clear to Pine Ridge. Sheriff says we can haul her Civic to Callahan's garage. They'll have parts by noon." Emily felt a sudden clutch of reluctance. Safe meant leaving the warm bubble, stepping back into the world where kindness was rare and storms frequent. John seemed to sense it. He offered his hand. End of the ride together, but not the end of the story. She took it. His grip was calloused, warm, solid. By 2:30, the Civic was winched onto the flatbed, taillights twinkling like sleepy fireflies. The plow led the way, carving a corridor of blacktop framed by white walls taller than the truck. Emily rode in John's Kenworth, heater on full, coffee reheated. At the edge of Pine Ridge, the streetlights wore halos of frost. The plow turned back. The tow truck rumbled toward Callahan's garage, where Mrs. Callahan herself had left the porch light on. John pulled up to the curb outside the diner. The closed sign was turned, but the door opened anyway, and Mrs. Callahan curlers under a knit cap waved them in. Inside, the air smelled of yeast and cinnamon, of coffee that had been kept on low heat since supper. She ushered Emily to a booth, wrapped a quilt around her shoulders, and set down 2 mugs without asking. John lingered by the door. "I'll be rolling at dawn. Maggie's expecting a call when I hit Casper." You'll be all right? Emily stood, quilt trailing. She wanted to say something grand, something equal to the gift of hours, but words felt small. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a tiny packet, the extra bag of miniature snowman marshmallows she'd bought for her mother. She pressed it into John's hand. For the road. So your coffee's sweet enough. He looked at the packet, then at her, eyes shining. Thank you, Emily. Mrs. Callahan snapped a photo on her flip phone, John in his plaid jacket, Emily in the quilt, both smiling like old friends. The flash lit the diner like a soft firework. Dawn came the color of pale peach. Emily's Civic sat outside the garage. Windshield cleared, battery on a trickle charger. Mrs. Callahan insisted on driving her the last 40 miles to Cheyenne in her old Buick heater-blasting classic Patsy Cline. As they pulled away, Emily looked back. John's Kenworth idled at the curb, exhaust curling into the rose-gold sky. He lifted one hand in farewell. She rolled down the window, cold air kissing her cheeks, and waved until the truck became a green speck, then nothing. 1 week later, a postcard arrived at the diner addressed to John Highway Hero. On the front, a photo of Emily and her mother in matching mugs of cocoa, miniature snowman marshmallows floating like tiny lifeboats. On the back, Emily had written, "The storm took the road, but you gave it back. Mom says thank you for bringing me home. She's saving a booth for you anytime the wheels turn this way. Safe miles, always." Mrs. Callahan propped the card on the counter beside the pie display. Regulars asked. She told the story, and each time someone dropped an extra tip into the jar labeled Fuel for Kindness. Mid-story pause for the viewer. Close your eyes. Can you feel the warmth of that diner coffee? Now ask yourself, what would you have done in John's place? Leave a word, a memory, even a single emoji below. Spring came early that year. Daffodils pushed through the last crust of snow along Pine Ridge's Main Street. On the first warm Saturday, Emily returned, driving the same Civic, now sporting new tires, and a tiny silver snowflake charm dangling from the rearview mirror. She carried a basket of fresh blueberry muffins, the kind her mother swore could thaw any heart, and a small envelope. John's Kenworth wasn't in town. Mrs. Callahan said he'd swapped routes, running lumber up to Billings for a few weeks. Emily left the envelope anyway. Inside, the photo from the diner night, plus a new one, Emily standing beside her mother under blooming lilacs, both holding mugs. On the back of the photo, she'd written, "Kindness travels farther than any storm. Thank you for teaching me the miles." Mrs. Callahan promised to tuck it into John's usual coffee thermos when he returned, gentle as snowfall. One small act can reroute an entire life. So tell us, when has someone's kindness carried you through your own storm? Share your kind story in the comments. Your words might become our next episode. And now, a quiet gift. That night, long after the diner closed and the streetlights flickered off, Mrs. Callahan stepped onto the porch. She breathed in the scent of lilacs drifting from the park, looked up at stars sharp as kindness itself, and whispered, "Keep rolling safe, John. Somewhere out there, somebody else is waiting for you to stop."